Lovely.
So, Richard, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Absolutely. I grew up in Cape Town. Went to school in Cape Town. Went to university in Cape Town. But very fortunate enough to do. I did an undergrad degree in Cape Town in mechanical engineering, and we're very fortunate enough to then go and study overseas for a few years. But I classify myself as a South African Cape Townian.
Right. And Richard, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Yeah, it's a lovely question, actually. For some crazy reason, I had a passion to design a telephone. And I think it was because I wanted to design. I wanted to be involved in a career where I was designing something that people would interact with. A human being would interact. It had to be something that people would use on a daily basis, or something that would change their lives or make their lives easier. So I don't think I had a career as such. I just knew I wanted to be in a world where I was developing a products or something or services that would change people's lives. Yeah.
So very much walking in the shoes of Edison and Tesla, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't have a view that it had to be a motor car, or it had to be, sort of electricity or anything like that. I think I mean, where I landed up at the end of the day was in a world of product design, which was really about developing products for clients that had consumers, that had users, and so very fortunate enough to land up in that, I guess, that dream career. And funnily enough, I actually got to design a telephone as part of that career.
Oh, right. Do you still have the prototype?
No, but we got photographs of it. It was a telephone for Alcatel in France.
Okay.
A mobile DECT phone, which funnily enough, I think still being used in around the world. I walked into Macro a few years ago, and they had it there. So it was just wonderful to see it out in the world being used. In some ways, you want to go to that person and say, "Hey, do you know, I was part of the design team that designed that phone," because good design is invisible, and so people just use products like the computer we're on, the cars we drive, but there were people behind designing that product. That people put time and passion and energy into developing and designing. They're the forgotten heroes in some ways. So I thought maybe I need to go up to this person at Macro and say, "Hey, do you know that product that you're holding, that was me," or I was part of that team.
Well, you never know. Your role might be acknowledged. So, Richard, can you tell us who inspired you, or what inspired you in your early days?
So I was one of those weird kids at school. I was good at engineering. I was good at maths and science, and I was good at art. And the school didn't really know what to do with me, because usually you were really good at science and maths and Afrikaans and those sort of subjects, or you were in the other space where you were creative and you were doing metalwork and woodwork and fine art or art. So I was in the middle, and somebody once mentioned to me that your value sits in the fact that you have a brain that can function in these two worlds. And I think that inspired me to say, okay, I need to follow a career. I need to leverage this unique skill. I had no idea at the time what that might look like. But I think somebody said to me, "Don't let it go to waste." And that inspired me to kind of search for a career or a life where I was just leveraging this kind of capacity that I had.
Right. Now, today you're the founding director of the Hasso Plattner D-School Africa at UCT. You have a very illustrious design career. You were heading, I think, in 2014, the World Design Capital. Looking back over your career, Richard, would you say there was a turning point?
Yeah.
Or maybe a number?
No, I trained as a mechanical engineer. I then trained as a product design engineer at the Royal College of Art in London. And I spent most of my early career in the product design space, in the design consulting space, designing products for clients, working with design teams, with fellow engineers, industrial designers, doing the most amazing work. And I got quite frustrated as part of that journey, in the sense that I didn't feel that the clients that we were working for really understood the value of design. Whether it was through the budgets that they had, or it was the acknowledgement of the way of thinking and the amount of work that actually goes into developing a product. And so I'd say about 15 years into my career, I decided to take myself off to business school to try and learn the world of business. How do these people think? Why don't they see the world like I see it? And it was at the business school. I was doing an executive MBA, but it was at the business school where they, I guess, exposed me to this concept called design thinking. And that fascinated me, because here I was, a practicing designer. I had studied at the leading art and design college in the world. I'd developed many products all over the world, but nobody had ever told me that what I was doing was design thinking. I was just doing what I was taught and I was trained for. And I think it was at that point I realized that is how the world sees that's how the non-world of design sees the world of design. They've got a language for it. They've got a lens for it. And I was absolutely intrigued by that. And since then, I've spent my career on the other side of the design fence, in the non-design world, teaching, exposing organizations, individuals to the true value of design, but in their language. And I think that was for that turning point for me, is moving out of the traditional design fraternity into the non-design world, but still being able to take my work with me. And I think it's as a designer, or as somebody that has been taught in a specific discipline, suddenly to realize that there is a whole nother world out there that can benefit from this discipline, was just invigorating. I just suddenly realized, wow, there's so much work to be done. So I think that was a turning point. It was probably around 2010, 2011.
Okay. Now, Richard, what would you say is driving you today?
I think the fact that there is so much work to be done in the challenges that we face, the grand challenges of the world, and the role that design-led mindsets, innovation, co-creation, leadership can play in that role. I think we as human beings haven't tapped nearly into the potential that we have in dealing with the challenges and coming up with new ideas. And I think what drives me is seeing when people get that aha moment, that they do have the ability to think differently, or to work differently, to build that confidence to go out there and take on the challenges. I think that for me is sort of really what drives me. It used to be the days when we'd develop a product and somebody would interface with it. Now it's about how you can actually change the way somebody sees the world and build that confidence within them.
Right. Now, Richard, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
so I truly believe, if you look in the world that we exist in, it's and the complexity that exists. I don't believe that as leaders and leadership, we are equipped with the mindset, the tools, the approach to be able to deal with the change and complexity that we face today. We have grand challenges that that exist. We are as humankind marching our way to self-extinction, and yet we keep applying the same way of thinking and the same tools and the same approaches that we use to actually create these problems. And so I believe the future of leadership is the need to relook at the ways of working, the ways of thinking, the ways of being, and to ask ourselves what needs to be different in order for us to deal with this new world that we live in. So I really think the future of leadership is in some ways disrupting what we understand as leadership currently, and to really start to embrace it in a way which in some ways maybe is unfamiliar, it's untested, it's untried. But either way, it needs to change, because if we keep applying the same approaches and the same way of thinking in the way that we created these challenges, there's no ways we're going to solve them. And so I think the future of leadership is very bright. But I don't know exactly what the answer is. I think it's something which needs to emerge as we try different techniques and theories. But I think it's a very exciting space.
Now, Richard, looking back over your own journey, what would you say, what is it we have to do more to build future leaders, to empower future leaders?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that we need to change the way we empower our leaders as opposed to the past. To really look at ourselves from a leadership learning perspective of what are the new leadership learning experiences we need to create and build for future leaders. I think the reality is that the world is too complex for the world is too complex to leave it up to individual people to try and work it out. So this concept of a single leader, this concept of an individual who has to hold, has to be the visionary, the one with all the answers. Those days for me are gone. I used to say in the world of design that because designers over time also had to deal with more and more complex challenges, to the point where design was too important to be left up to the designers. Everybody needs to be part of that process. And I think in the leadership space, it's the same thing. Leadership is too important to be left to the leaders. It needs to be something which in some ways is democratized, that everybody has a role to play in leadership, that perhaps the leader changes as the project evolves. So this sort of individual heroic leader, I think, is a concept that we need to let go of, and we need to start to train people to be comfortable with a mode of leadership where leadership is perhaps measured as an outcome of a whole lot of activities, which is a collective experience and a collective way of working, as opposed to an individual person that is measured.
Now, Richard, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis to the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
Well, there was a lot of discussion in Davos this year, the World Economic Forum, around this concept of polycrisis, and the polycrisis being the culmination of lots of little crises adding together to create even a bigger crisis, which then affects everything. So whether you look at grand challenges such as climate change or disruption in technology, global movement migration. These are things which are grand challenges, but they actually will affect you as a leader in your business, in your organization. You could probably trace the challenges you have back to these big grand challenges. So I think the important thing for the leaders of today is to recognize that these are complex challenges being driven by an environment which we have no direct control over. And so what are the skills and mindsets and ways of being do we need to adopt in order to address these challenges? So I think the key thing is for the leaders to learn to let go of the existing tools that they have and to pick up new tools and to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness of having to know that they don't actually know what they're doing, and it will emerge with time. So I think it's that unlearning and relearning piece, which I think is absolutely crucial. And that will be a continuous learning journey. It's not something we will do once. You'll have to do it over and over again. So how do we build that muscle? How do we build that way of being, which that just becomes part of your daily work in dealing with the uncertainty of whatever might come across your table tomorrow. Yeah.
And Richard, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are maybe one or two new skills that you would want to factor in?
So I think the fear of the unknown is a big one. So how do we build competency and capability in dealing with uncertainty, where you can't rely on historic data because that has become unreliable. You can't rely on future data because there isn't any. So how do you start to make decisions that move the agenda forward? And so what do you as a leader need to bring to that? What are the lived experiences? What's the way of feeling that you need to bring into that space? But how do you also bring others with you? Because of the complexity, you need diversity of thinking in the space. So I think for me, some of the key things is, how do we embrace the diversity of thinking? How do we as leaders start to make decisions based on incomplete data? And how do we perhaps adopt a way of working where the solution will emerge over time? That we may not know what the answer is when we start, but we'll go through a journey which will start to become apparent. And so, yeah, that fluidness, what that culminates into a learning experience, I wouldn't know at this point. But I think these are a way of being that you'd want to create in a leader. And to take this not only just in the work environment, this is something you apply at home, in your life, everywhere. It's got to be a way of being. It's got to be a way you show up as a human being. This is not something you just flick a switch when you're at work, and be in the sort of leadership role. Yeah.
I like that. Now, Richard, as a mentor to so many future leaders, would you mind sharing a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
I think it's I guess it comes back to, what's the definition of a leader? How does one know that, I mentored this person and they're now out there leading? I think, I'll go back to the world when I was leading design projects, and you would have teams of designers working on the project, and how you build confidence in them, in the sense of, because we're innovating, we're doing something new here. And because we're doing something new here, there's a high probability that, our first attempts might fail. And so how do you build confidence in people to embrace failure as part of a learning journey, or to be comfortable with failure and celebrate failure? So I think as part of that sort of mentoring journey is to to provide comfort for people, to say, I believe in you, go and work on this project. But if it doesn't turn out the way you thought it would, I'm here to help you. I'm not going to hang you up. It's not going to be a witch hunt. So it's about building what I would call creative confidence in people. And from one of the experiences of designers in our team, how they would then evolve and actually go out and start their own businesses because they've got an idea and they've got the confidence to take that idea on. So I think it's really about, and I think that can happen even with children, just giving them the confidence to fail, make their own decisions, and sort of lead within aspects of their lives. And so I think it's just the importance of building that up as a leader, and investing the time in the person, not necessarily the project.
Right. And Richard, looking back over your career, have you encountered any role models of leadership and maybe worked with them whom you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
That's another great question. So I think good leadership is invisible, in the sense that I think where you find good leadership, you don't actually know who the person is that's behind it. In other words, it's not an individual, it's a collective. It was a collective effort, but there's usually a person, there's usually somebody who's accountable. And that person isn't front and center in the reports or the press or anything. So I feel when it comes to singling out an individual, for me, I would say that leaders that inspired me are the ones who wouldn't be your heroic leader that you would expect to see out there. The big names of somebody that's built a company up and so-called done it single-handedly. I think for me, one of my most inspiring leaders was when I was at the working at the city of Cape Town, and the city manager at the time that I was reporting to. I was quite young at the time, and running around, worried about failure and worried about what if this doesn't work. And he turned around to me and he said, "Richard, it's okay. Nobody's going to die. Let's just think about this and work it out." So I think that calmness. Now, he was the city manager, and in an environment like a city administration, the people you usually see as the leaders, the mayor and the political layer. But here was a layer of leadership which were just getting on and doing the job, and doing it in a very professional, collective, co-creative way. So I think most of the good leaders are actually the ones that we just don't hear about.
Right. Now, Richard, how can our listeners reach out to you, and where should they follow you?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm at the Hasso Plattner D School Africa. So one can Google that, and we have a website and specifically the programs that we run here at the University of Cape Town. But I'm on LinkedIn. If you search for Richard Perez, D School Africa. I'm not a prolific social media person, but when I do find things of interest, I do post them, and wonderful if people would want to follow that. It'd be great just to sort of share but yeah, generally through LinkedIn or through the website, you can enroll on our newsletter. See what activities that we're doing and that sort of thing.
Great. And last but not least, Richard, what is your advice for the millions of learners out there who are looking to leave school, enter the world of work, start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles they should keep in mind?
I would say, don't start with global domination in mind. Life is stepping stones. One chapter leads to the next chapter, leads to the next chapter, leads to the next chapter. Your learnings from the one chapter, you feed into the next chapter. And it takes time. So don't be impatient. You'll get there if you're driven and you know that, and you're running these experiments in life, like, let me try this for a few years and then stop and think and make the next decision. Don't try and work it out all on day one. Don't say, okay, I'm going to become an engineer, and I'm going to go and work in the engineering industry my whole life. Go and become an engineer for 2 years and try it out, and then stop and say, well, this is what I want to do. What else is out there? So I think see life as a stepping stone, and keep pushing yourself. Very important. Don't get complacent. And through that, you will build a career where you'll find purpose and meaning, and that growth mindset will just become part of your everyday life. I mean, we all know how careers have been so disrupted. You know, the careers we have now, the 5 years time, half of them are not going to be in existence. So you need to build a mindset and a way of thinking that can deal with the uncertainty and the change. And as such, see life as these little stepping stones, but keep building. Realize that there's always, you got to keep stepping. Don't stop stepping. And yeah, just be passionate about it.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and reminding us that life is a series of stepping stones.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nick, and it's lovely to chat to you.
Thank you.